Hello, my name is Tyler Esselman.
And I'm Michael Osinski.
And you are listening to This One Goes to 11.
This One Goes to 11. It's a podcast, in case you're unfamiliar with it, where Tyler and I invite people that we dig, people that we don't know, but people who really feel strongly about music, about generally one album, and they tell us all about one album that they believe to be perfect.
So perfect, in fact, Michael, that 10 out of 10 just isn't good enough.
Indeed.
Nope.
It requires a new digit in the ones column.
We're going to keep that rule sacred.
Do people still even learn about the ones and tens columns anymore? Or is there some sort of like common core math? I don't know.
Yeah, you're talking to the wrong guy about that.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, anyway.
Math was never my strong suit.
Well, anyway, Tyler, who did we talk to this week?
Well, this week we have another wonderful woman in my life. I'm blessed in my life with so many wonderful women, and I count Kelsey Ann Wacker among those. She is an actor, writer, producer, and all-around goddamn powerhouse of a woman. Her and her stupid hot husband, Nathan, made a film called The Den that has been making the festival rounds and wowing audiences. Link to the website will be in our bio. They also have a podcast called Florida Woman Podcast that dives deep on everything weird and striking about Florida's deep, dark underbelly. And to top all that off, keep an eye out for their new hangover relief beverage called Party Girl Potion. We're going to get links to all these things for you in the bio, but let me just get back to Kelsey Ann for a second here, okay? She does all those things, and in everything she does, as an artist, she is keenly focused on the truth and leaving an indelible effect on our audiences. And as a regular old human being, she is one of the most deeply kind, compassionate people I have ever known, and a truly high-quality friend. So she's one of a kind. She's Kelsey Ann. She's really fun, talking about a great album today.
And she's also a Scorpio, much like the artist that we cover this week, and like myself. So yes. I find it is a misunderstood cadre of individuals, the Scorpios in the world.
I love mine. I've got some good ones.
That word
you
before. Include. Cadre? I mean, like the French.
I believe it's
cadre.
I believe it's cadre. Yeah, I believe you said it right.
Yeah. Well, I'll check it on the OED. But for now, I think we should get right to the conversation. What do you think, Tyler?
Yes, let's do it.
Let's just do that.
Kelsey Ann, thank you so much for joining us this week on This One Goes to 11.
A pleasure.
This is you making your case for what you believe is a perfect album. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what album hath thou brought before the tribunal this week?
Yes. Well, I have to be controversial first and foremost. I have to say that I thought it was a tad cowardly that you didn't pick the Taylor Swift album that I recommended. That would be Red by Taylor Swift, because I think Joni Mitchell Blue is a more obvious choice for many reasons, and reasons that are genuine and real. But I think that it would have been more edgy, actually, to have picked Taylor Swift, because Joni gets her due, which is good, and we're going to give her even more due today. But
Flowers
Taylor
for Joni. Yeah.
gets her due gets skipped a little. And I have a lot to bring to that discussion. So if you ever want me on the podcast again, I won't out you first, but I will discuss Taylor Swift at length, her artistry, and she is very inspired by Joni. So I think that there's a through line.
A bit of a confession, just so you know, by the time this episode airs, Kelsey Ann, we will have already aired an episode where we are talking about Taylor Swift's Red.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
So
my
unfortunately,
apologies.
we just didn't choose you. You caught us though. You caught us because as of right now, as of right this moment, at the time of recording, we have not yet done an episode on Taylor Swift, though we will.
And I will be listening to that episode.
And even though it's less controversial, I don't think I think there's it matters to me what kind of case you make about an album like this. And I think in the way you weave your story into it, I think when it's a greater classic, I think it's almost harder, I would venture to say.
I think it's harder to stake a personal claim on a
Mhm.
classic album or something that
Good.
is appreciated by most people, which I think Joni Mitchell's Blue qualifies for.
Totally.
I would agree with that. Yeah. And also it's sort of like when you had this album on your list and we saw it, it was, I mean, there's a few albums that I feel like once someone nominates them, it's going to be a no-brainer. Like we
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
with that. And this was one
Totally.
of them. To talk about this album at length is, I mean, a gift for all of us.
Yeah.
I felt that way. I felt that way about a few albums so far. Like when Purple Rain was on a list, I was like, yeah, we probably
Done
need to talk about that one.
immediately.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and
Yeah, a
I
favorite of mine.
also she's the second of our sort of Laurel Canyon musicians on, because we did talk about Carole King in our first season.
Good. Another
which
brilliant songwriter.
And in preparing for this episode, and also, can we just talk about how it's only a 36-minute long album as well? So you can quite literally listen to the whole album
On
in
repeat.
half the like for days on end. And it was interesting to me. I think her energetic. We're getting ahead of ourselves here, but her energetic relationship with Carole King and how they kind of have different sort of energies that they bring to that same scene. I want to talk about that more. Let's put a pin in that real quick, though, and let's do
a very important segment we have to get to here.
A very important segment. It's everyone's favorite segment, I would put my money on, and that is
okay.
that is for anyone who's not familiar with the work of Miss Joni Mitchell. If you've been living under a rock, then we want to give you an opportunity to just get a little bit of context about who she is and about what this album is in the context of her story. But we don't have that much time. It's only an hour long at most. That's what we're shooting for, people. So we have this segment called The Beginner's Guide to Joni Mitchell's Blue in 60 Seconds. And today, Michael Lisinski so lovingly has taken on the duties of doing this because I have schoolwork and he loves me. And so he's going to be doing our recap today. Kelsey Ann, you'll get a chance to grade him on how he does after. We feel good about that?
Yes.
All right, Michael, are you ready?
This felt a little bit like, I think, the time when you had to try and do Prince in 60 seconds. And I was but whatever. I have accepted the challenge and I am ready to attack it.
All right, I know you are. Ready? Starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
The one, the only Joni Mitchell, born Roberta Joan Anderson on November 7th, 1943, a Scorpio in Alberta, Canada, taught herself guitar. Due to a bout with polio at age 9, she had to find alternative tunings to compensate for her weakened left hand, which led to many of the unconventional but now characteristic chord progressions and harmonies that populate her music. She recorded and produced her fourth album, Blue, in 1971. Transparently autobiographical, it reflects on her relationship and breakup with Graham Nash, her extended vacation in Greece, and her new relationship with a heroin-addicted James Taylor, who plays guitar on the album. Though the album appears on just about every greatest album of all time list, it won 0 Grammy Awards, proving once and for all that winning a Grammy Award doesn't mean anything. She has released 19 studio albums and iconic tracks like Big Yellow Taxi, The Circle Game, and Both Sides Now. Recently, she made an appearance at the Newport Folk Festival with Brandy Carlisle and friends, her first public performance in 20 years, and it was magical.
Oh, man. Michael, you're getting really good at that. You're getting the hours you've been putting in. Kid, they show.
Well, thanks. But now the important question is, Kelsey Ann, how did I do? How will you grade me? And you can use whatever scale you choose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go traditional teach.
Okay,
I'm going to give you an A-.
Okay. All right.
I definitely in the A range.
Okay.
I'm so glad you mentioned polio, because not only because of the tunings and the way that it changed her music, and it's such an interesting anecdote when you know that there's sort of a reason why she's tuning her guitar all these strange ways that are now totally associated with Joni Mitchell. But also this has a lot to do, I think, with her standing up for the COVID-19 vaccine as someone who suffered from polio. So for those listeners who don't already know this, she pulled her music from Spotify after Joe Rogan signed an exclusive deal with Spotify based on some of the things Joe Rogan has said about vaccines, particularly anti the vaccines. And I thought that was interesting when I learned that she had polio. And so there's this kind of connection there. The only reason I give you a minus is because
Yeah.
specifically in the context of Blue, I think it's worth mentioning that she has a song called Little Green about giving birth to and giving her daughter up for adoption. As a singer-songwriter who's known for a quote-unquote confessional style, almost like a melody memoirist singer. I think that's an important track of note, and she doesn't really sing about her on any other album. And then the other thing that I would love to mention about Joni Mitchell in 60 seconds is that she has Morgellons disease, and I think we really need to talk about this. But you said her concert was amazing, and I had heard that it was as well.
It's excellent.
Yeah, I mean, because apparently she had been for the past few years recovering from her brain aneurysm. She was having these things called Joni jams, where like she'd have friends over to start trying to get back her ability to play music and just to like associate with friends. And so I think it sort of turned into that. And I think Brandi Carlile knew that was happening. And I don't know if Brandi invited Joni to be part of this, because it was Brandi Carlile's set, but then it was all Joni Mitchell's set. Basically.
Yeah. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
But wait, but Morgellons. What is Morgellons then? I missed this one.
Now, listen, if we're going to talk about Joni, things are going to get complex. So there's many things that are really admirable.
A-. That's what you give them.
Layers.
I think
A-.
It's been recorded, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my final answer. Awesome. But this one is just kind of interesting and hilarious to me. So she's 78, and Morgellons is basically not real.
Really?
It's not like it is known as a condition because there are women who come forward with a certain set of symptoms, and they've collected those symptoms under this particular name, but they can't find any medical like proof, and I'm using air quotes, that these things are occurring and that this is a quote unquote real disease. But there are women who present this particular collection of symptoms, so they give it a name, but basically as of yet it doesn't exist. And I guess you feel like you have these fibrous like pins, like these bugs almost like inside your skin, and it makes like fabric terrifyingly uncomfortable, and it makes you not be able to come into contact with things like clothing basically. And
this is why I like not
really
doing
painful.
Too much research, because then you can bring stuff like this to the table and learn some crazy shit. Oh my god,
there's fatigue
torturous.
Involved, and but it's only reported from wealthy white women in California. I just had to say that.
Oh no.
So it's kind of like Epstein-Barr or something, or Lyme disease. I'm just kidding.
Wait, hold on.
Okay, wait.
Yeah, Lyme disease I had. I was one of those people that barely missed out on like really getting messed up by Lyme disease.
No.
Yeah,
but
I had
you don't have it anymore. It's gone.
I don't. They caught it early enough because this is such a tangent. Oh, I love this. But I caught it when I was in like middle school, and I had to be on antibiotics for weeks. And I was like, I don't think anyone fully explained to me how close I was to having something really messed up though. And maybe we didn't know. Because I feel like now I'm hearing about it. Yeah, those ticks, they'll kill you in Missouri.
I guess what I mean by that is just if you take a test for Lyme at a doctor's office and you don't have it on the test, there are a lot of holistic doctors that, hey, I've gone to and they've really helped. But like holistic doctors will be like, you probably have Lyme, even though it says you don't. Like you probably do. So there are people who are in pain and they don't know what it is, and people will just be like, it's Lyme, but who knows? But anyway,
okay.
We can talk
you have
about
given
Joni
me
Mitchell now.
so many things. You have given me so many things to look up. Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah, before we dive too far into Joni Mitchell, we like to ask our guests a much more general question, which is basically what is and what has been your relationship with music throughout your life?
Well, I grew up singing at church mostly, and choirs and musicals, things of that nature. And I
Of
think
course.
I think I have a really strange relationship to music. I often go around saying I hate music. Um, because I think what I mean by that is, again, I grew up singing. I also played the clarinet and a little bit of piano, and people thought that I was really good at it. So that crippled me instantly. I somehow just shrank underneath that. And, no one was trying to do anything bad to me by saying that. I mean, it wasn't even like I was under a lot of pressure. It was just like, knowing that I was supposed to be good at something, it suddenly sucked all the fun out of it. And it's my fears about it sort of just made participating in it impossible. Although I still did throughout my life. And I actually went to college my first year with a BFA musical theater degree. But there's nothing that can make you hate music more than participating in musical theater over one's lifetime. Yeah, and like to this day, it's a really vulnerable thing. And I just last year started. I don't take them anymore, but for a period of 8 months, I took singing lessons as an adult, just
Good for you.
to try to explore that a little bit without any pressure. But what I think what else is interesting about my relationship to music is my parents don't listen to music.
Really?
How strange is that? Have you ever heard of that?
I don't think it's as strange as you think. I think that
Okay,
well, I think it's crazy. What I think is crazy is that I'm meeting more and more people in my life who just don't really have a relationship to music like that.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think I take for granted because it's such a key pillar in my identity is the music that I listen to and my relationship to music. But more and more I'm meeting people where it's just like they don't get it. They don't understand how it could be so important.
Part of it might be just, the sense that now the convenience of accessing music is just so easy to access anything that in some ways I feel like it's lost some of its meaning. Whereas I feel like, I know that my parents used to play records and you had to go buy the record and you had to put the record on, and midway through you had to flip the record over. And I think that,
something tactile to it.
Yeah, and the fact,
Physically.
I think about this every time a Radiohead album came out. Was I actually going to buy it because the stuff that came with it would be just as important? And I don't know. I guess I think if your parents weren't record people, I guess I could see where music wouldn't be on as much in the house, because tapes were fine, but they weren't the same. They felt very I don't know. They felt really impersonal unless you were making a mixtape for someone.
Yeah.
Ooh, then it was very personal.
We haven't talked much about tapes on this podcast yet, but that was such a they were fine, but they were kind of like an odd mutation in the growth and evolution of auditory media, I guess.
I feel like the record to the CD makes more sense, and the tape
In
just
some
feels
ways.
like a strange tangent that we took, the cassette tape.
Yeah,
It doesn't feel sturdy.
The tape enabled recording, and the tape also enabled listening to music in your car. I think maybe
That's true.
was
Yeah,
that's
a big
if
deal.
you wanted to listen to something very specific. But yeah, aside from that, because it's an analog medium too. So when you recorded onto it, you had to do it in real time.
Right.
Which again, when you're making a mixtape, makes it a labor of love. But still, aside from that, it felt like a pretty inconvenient medium.
To your point, Michael, you also, you had this record store, or you had a music store that you would go to, and maybe it would be very generically stocked, but maybe someone would introduce you to, someone had to tell you about a record that not everyone was listening to. And it almost felt like trading in secrets. Like there was something really special and gooey about learning about an artist that not everyone knew about and tracking down their music. Maybe it was a town or two over, you found a guy who, and now it's like the internet can teach you everything, so it's not like a personal connection. No person has to actually introduce you to it, whereas a lot of the I know Nate's uncle played him Megadeth, and it was like, what? But you're relating that musical experience to someone in your life, and that's becoming an important moment. Whereas when I listen to new music now, it's almost like by accident I'll stumble on something. It just doesn't have that connection. I don't know.
Well, we're curious to know now, I guess, how did you come to discover this album? Was it a particular story, or was it, I mean, I guess, what's the source of this being a perfect album for you?
Yeah.
I went to boarding school. I went to a boarding school my junior and senior year for the arts. It was called
Hell
I almost said Interlochen. I didn't get into Interlochen, so it's not fair.
You
The
did almost say
Idlewild
that.
Arts Academy. I went there for camp, didn't get into the school. It's a crying shame. But the Idlewild Arts Academy was a lot cooler anyway.
California.
Everyone there was, a lot of people, I'd say 50% was from California. The school is in California, in a little mountain town called Idlewild. So, coming from Florida and coming from sort of like a Republican-y, churchy background, I was encountering cool people for the first time. It was like everyone, it just all seemed so foreign but so cool. And like the people you saw kind of like in TV, those people were real. They wore like bohemian clothing and they ate like organic stuff and they listened to music you'd never heard of. And so my roommate introduced me to this album actually on a record player. And there we go. And her and I remained best friends for many, many years. And it's sort of just a succession of women in my life because I was introduced to the album through her. And then a college roommate of mine, Sophie, also really loved this album and would play it in our house. And I sort of reacquainted myself with this album then. And it sort of stretched from there.
I always wonder with her as well, people of our generation, I feel like the first time I probably heard a Joni Mitchell song was in Love Actually. And
I wonder.
And I sometimes wonder when people of our generation have discovered her, if that was it, because it's such a good use of that song, though that song's very different from Blue. But anyway, I think that's the perfect way in which to first hear that album is on vinyl in Southern California.
In a tiny little dorm room with some white girl with dreadlocks.
We love that, don't we?
I can almost
she
see
lost
the
him
posters.
A few years later.
Okay. You can see the posters on the wall of your room, basically, just a description. Did the album seem cool to you, or did it seem, I don't know, like it was? It's something. It's such a classic album to me now that I sort of think I don't want to say that it's timeless because I hate that word, but I mean, I'm just wondering for you at the age you heard it, in this environment you heard it being such an old album, like, was it something that was cool, or was it something that felt so uncool that it was cool? You know what I mean?
I do. I think cool is a really interesting discussion point, just the word cool and what that means. I did think it was very cool. This is another part of my relationship to music, is that like I always liked really popular music. I definitely listened to top 40. I listened to country. I listened to pop. And so I was introduced to something that seemed so cool, but that I actually responded to in a genuine way. That wasn't like, oh, if I don't pretend to listen to this, then I won't be popular. I don't know. I was very much like, I mean, bullied is extremely strong, but like I did not have the good, cool taste at my high school. Like it was not cool to listen to top 40, to like pop music, to listen to, heaven forbid, country. Just put that one all the way off the table. It was cool to listen to bands no one knew about, to listen to really obscure stuff. And if you weren't doing that, then you just didn't even have a part in the conversation. So it was super cool, but I liked it despite it being super cool, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You had to go through all the reversals. The reversals of like the peer pressure of it and all that, and the social, just like the social energy of music in general. And you had to just reverse it enough times that you ended up liking it, which is, hey, whatever it takes. It's like, that is the power of a piece of art, I suppose, to make someone feel seen in that. No matter how cool or uncool you were, it was going to be a good listen. What about the sound of it struck you? Was it for me? It's like kind of she's one of those people that gives you permission, that makes it okay to kind of break the rules. It was that thing from jazz, that I think she got. That
and she was a huge fan of jazz.
Right. And so when she was able to put that into folk music, like I think in her own particular way, I think that was really a key for a lot of people's appreciation of it, certainly mine. But I wonder what first struck you about the sound. Was it the lyrics? Was it the instrumental arrangement? What hit you?
Did you know that the title Blue was actually inspired by Kind of Blue, Miles Davis? Kind of Blue. That's the name of that album, right?
Not surprised.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
A devotee of Miles. For
400
me,
points for Miles.
What strikes me musically about this album is like its curliness. Like I feel like this album is perfectly unfinished, and I think there's a lot of production that goes into albums these days. Not to be that kind of person, but even folk albums tend to feel a little polished, and there are times when I like listening to polished songs, but this feels like it's coming from a person, not from like a studio, and because of that, it just feels unfinished in this like in this never-ending way where everything sort of loops in on itself, both melodically and lyrically, and I feel like songs never really finish on this album. I feel like it's this labyrinth, and at every corner, at every new phrase, that's not what I expected it to be. Like, that's not where I expected her to go. So I feel like it's this journey, and it's a very surprising album, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. The curliness, I think, makes so much sense. You get points for that. And then the coming from a person, not a studio, that is I think it's something that maybe not in those words that has been expressed by a lot of people that we've talked to on this podcast, this journey so far, because I think there is an authenticity to it that is ineffable. Like, it's like you can't quite, it's somewhere in between the lines, and it makes you feel like anyone could do it, but it makes you feel like she was particularly meant to do that thing, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think we said a lot of similar things when we talked about Tapestry, frankly. The fact that like the production, it does sound, the simplicity, the lack of artifice. I mean, in some ways, this is a strange comparison. Oh, no, I don't think it's that strange, but it makes me think of, if you've ever heard the isolated audio track of Whitney Houston singing, where there's no effect put on it whatsoever, and she's pitch perfect, and it's just it reminds me of that. Like, I feel like this album for Joni Mitchell and Whitney Houston's voice, there is just this purity and simplicity, and I mean, dare I say it, I know we haven't gotten to the end of the episode, but there's sort of a perfection about their sound, and there's not a lot of stuff added onto it. It's just them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Joni's voice is something that not a lot of people talk about when they're talking about her music, because her songwriting is so elegant. But, her instrument is just unparalleled. I feel like she's in a league of her own. It's her sound. It's so fanciful. It's a soprano voice. I mean, she's so comfortable everywhere on the range, but she has this sort of like angelic voice.
Right. Especially when she's younger.
Can get super deep as well. Yeah. And this was, towards the beginning. I think she became famous right around this album, if I'm not mistaken. Michael, you might know better than
I think whichever album came out before this, I think might have been a slightly bigger hit, or at least had more recognizable hits on it. This is actually, I think, not it in history. It is now considered to be like her greatest album, I think. But at the time, I don't think it was as popular as some of her others.
Sure.
But I can already tell that she's dealing with some of the effects of fame. So that makes sense that it was the album right before this. Yeah, I just think there's a playfulness. Maybe that's to your point, Tyler, about when you hear this, it feels like anyone could do it.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is that freedom, that play, where she's somehow pitch perfect, but it feels off the cuff. It feels like she's just making it up as she goes.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's like, this is a art question for you. Like, is the effortlessness attractive to you, or is it like, as you know, as an artist yourself too? I mean, I feel like, you know, we all met in school for this, for theater, you know, so it was like we were focused on craft to some degree, but it's like, I guess my question is, like, for both of you, when you see somebody who looks like it just comes naturally to them and that it doesn't require much work or effort, is that something that you appreciate in them, or is it a frustration, or neither? How does it hit you?
I usually find it to be selfishly a little bit of a frustration, but
Mm-hmm.
I know enough about Joni, so I know
Yeah.
that she was actually incredibly practiced, and these things that sound spontaneous, by and large, weren't. She was really
That's great.
interested
Yeah.
in exploring different things and nailing different things, and actually, she's quite a perfectionist. And in fact, she won't listen to her music. I mean, obviously, like when she's maybe in those Joni jams, I mean, you know, you're playing live, but she does not like to go back and listen to any of her recorded music because she'll start to pick it apart, which I think any artist
there you
does.
go. Yeah, I think that's a great answer. It's a great answer. And that does kind of override the way that it makes us feel as an audience person anyway. But Michael, did you have a response to that?
I think it depends. Someone like Joni Mitchell on this album, I'm not mad because the simplicity, like there's like a complexity of the music, a simplicity of the delivery, and there's that sort of, I think we've brought this up before too, when someone can write lyrics that are both direct and poetically circuitous at the same time. And that's what she does. I mean, I have to tell you, like, I was talking to my husband in preparation for this episode, and I just sort of looked
all the
at him
people on our subreddit are like, he has a husband. Ooh.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. All the fans now. And I just sort of looked at him and I said, this is just like, I couldn't even get the words out. Cause I'm like, this album is just, this is amazing. Like there's not a wrong note. There's not like a choice on here that feels like it doesn't belong there. And it, and he was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm like, this is, and I'm someone who loves music that is, you know, a little weird, or where there's a lot of complex musical things going on there, and they're playing with weird effects and lyrics that don't make any sense unless you really dissect them. And here I am, like, you know, raving about this artist who just, maybe it's because she just sings from her heart too. Like it's like I said in the intro, it is transparently autobiographical. I mean, I think it was, I don't know if it was Chris Christopherson or someone that she talked to after the album came out, and he sort of told her, like, oh my God, why did you release this? Like this, he's like,
I think he said, Joni, keep some things to yourself.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at her.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting.
That's a great answers to both of you.
Yeah, if I may, though, I think that's interesting, Michael. Let me go off. That she is known as someone who kind of bears it all in this way, because she bucks against that quite a bit. And there's a very famous quote. I feel like anytime someone talks about Blue, or it's like on like a review on NPR for the whatever anniversary, someone always, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but the quote is basically kind of right after the album came out, she said, I was defenseless when I wrote and recorded this. I had not developed any defenses. I couldn't pretend to be stronger or smarter or more capable. I couldn't pretend to be happy. And I felt like the cellophane wrapper on a pack of cigarettes. Like I was that transparent. And so there's not a dishonest note on that album. But I think also what she's implying is that's not a place that an artist can stay forever, and they shouldn't be expected to either. And then she sort of bucks against this idea that she is like that it's a diary, that it's incredibly personal, because of course it is, and we do know so much about her life, connecting like certain lovers and things. But I think that her idea is that it detracts from the art, that it becomes more about her feelings at the time and less about the song as a piece of art.
See,
which
no,
I just find interesting.
Right.
I'm glad you
Yeah.
mentioned that quote. If you hadn't mentioned that, I was prepared to share it later. But I think
Yeah.
I guess
Well, you can
no,
actually
no,
share it. I just
no.
paraphrased
That's
it.
no. You hit pretty much. You hit almost everything in that quote. But
Mhm.
I mean, I think I can obviously respect an artist not wanting it to be just about them. But for me, because I didn't know that was the case, and then when I started doing some digging for this episode, and I discovered just how much. I mean, like the line, and I can't remember the exact line in Blue, but they talk about. She mentions something about needles and drugs and whatnot. And now, like, knowing that at the time she was involved with James Taylor, who was very addicted, and sort of, how do I deal with this? And the fact that there's almost like these little Easter eggs that just make me respect her even more. The fact that she was able to take the personal and make it into art that can appeal to multiple people, not just herself.
Yeah. I have another quote about just that. So she says, if you listen to that music and you see me, you're not getting anything out of it. If you listen to that music and you see yourself, it'll probably make you cry and you'll learn something about yourself. And now you're getting something out of it.
Oh. Yeah. 100 points. 100 you get 100 million points. Before it gets too weepy, because it just might. We're heading in that direction. We're going to share a standout track, and we're mixing it up a little bit because of what the two standout tracks we picked were this week, dear listeners. Michael and I are going to present our standout track to you right now in the middle of the episode, so we can close out on Kelsey Ann's standout track. But also, there's another asterisk. That's two asterisks in 1 week. Oh God, I hope you keep listening. The other asterisk is that because of the situation with Joe Rogan and Spotify that we talked about earlier in the episode, Joni Mitchell has also removed her music from Spotify. You do you, girl. I respect it, and we are going to post links to the standout tracks in the bio for this episode. You'll be able to go to YouTube and listen to the song. So you just pause on us and then go over to YouTube for a couple minutes and then come back over and listen to the rest of the episode. It's going to be great. So if I've explained well enough, then Michael, what have we chosen as our standout track from Blue? And it was an arduous task to do this, by the way.
Yeah, it was sort of like picking a track off Tapestry. But I will say, unlike Tapestry, where there was one track we were definitely not going to pick, this one I felt like all of them could have applied.
Agreed.
We've gone with the title track, Blue, which is, I mean, I don't know if it's the definition of sadness or if it's but there's like beauty in it, and it's mysterious, and it's that sort of curling you were talking about, Kelsey Ann. It feels like that's very much present in this song, and it's, I don't know, and it's just her on piano through the whole thing. It's just gorgeous. It is gorgeous. That's all I can say.
It's the last song on the first side as well, if you're listening to it on vinyl. So it's an amazing song to end the first side of an album because it just leaves you wanting more.
Yeah.
So
go on over to YouTube and listen to it, and then pause this and come on back to us. So we'll see you in a bit.
That's the end of part 1. If you access this episode via our YouTube playlist, you're about to hear our guest's standout track. If you'd like to jump ahead to part 2, you'll find a link in the description of this episode.